Stop scrolling for a second. Stay with me. Because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you understand love and relationships. I'm Sarah, and as a female psychologist, I've spent years studying the hidden emotional patterns behind attraction, attachment, and long-term commitment. One thing I've learned is this. Most men believe they instinctively know when a woman is deeply in love with them. They watch for the obvious signs. She texts constantly, wants to be physically close, or tries to spend every possible moment together. But here's the reality that surprises almost everyone. Those behaviors often reflect excitement, infatuation, or the emotional high of a new connection, not necessarily deep, lasting love. If those are the only signals you're paying attention to, you're trying to navigate a complicated emotional landscape with the wrong map. Imagine walking through a dense forest while holding a compass that doesn't point north. No matter how confident you feel, you're still heading in the wrong direction. That's exactly why so many men are caught completely off guard when a woman they believed was completely devoted suddenly walks away. They thought they understood the relationship, but they were reading the wrong signals all along. The truth is much more complex, and honestly, much more fascinating. Modern relationship psychology and behavioral research continue to reveal something remarkable. A huge percentage of men misunderstand the strongest indicators of female commitment. Instead of recognizing genuine emotional attachment, they often mistake temporary excitement for love while overlooking the behaviors that truly matter. In other words, there's often a massive gap between what she's experiencing emotionally and what you're actually seeing. Maybe you found yourself lying awake at night, replaying every conversation in your head. Perhaps she seems a little quieter than usual, a little more independent, or less focused on impressing you. Your mind immediately jumps to the worst possible conclusion. Is she losing interest? Is she pulling away? Did I do something wrong? But as a female psychologist, I can tell you that those assumptions are often completely backward. What many men interpret as emotional distance is sometimes the exact opposite. In many healthy relationships, a woman's brain gradually shifts into an entirely different stage of attachment. Instead of operating from excitement and uncertainty, she begins creating emotional stability. Her nervous system slowly stops asking whether you're going to stay, because deep inside, it has already accepted you as part of her future. She isn't creating distance. She's creating permanence. She's moving beyond the performance stage of dating, the phase where both people naturally try to impress each other, and entering something much deeper, a place where you're no longer just someone she enjoys spending time with. You've become someone she quietly builds her life around. That transition changes everything. Today, I'm going to reveal 7 powerful behaviors that only appear when a woman experiences this level of transformational love. These aren't first date behaviors. They're not honeymoon phase habits. They don't usually appear during the first few months when everything feels exciting and unpredictable. These are long-term attachment behaviors, the kind that emerge only after emotional trust has taken root. And I need you to pay especially close attention to number 4. Out of everything we'll discuss, it's probably the most misunderstood behavior in modern relationships. To most men, it looks like a warning sign. Some even mistake it for boredom or emotional withdrawal. But once you understand the psychology behind it, you'll realize it's often one of the strongest pieces of evidence that she has fallen more deeply for you than she has for anyone before. If you misread these signals, you could unintentionally damage the healthiest relationship you've ever had. Not because either of you stopped loving each other, but because you never learned to understand the emotional language she's speaking. Now let's begin with the very first sign. 1. Strategic vulnerability and selective blindness. One of the clearest indicators of deep emotional love is a dramatic change in what she chooses to reveal, and just as importantly, what she deliberately keeps hidden from everyone else. Most people have heard the common advice. They'll tell you that a woman feels comfortable when she stops worrying about looking perfect around you. Maybe she wears oversized hoodies instead of dressing up. Maybe she stops putting on makeup every single time you see each other. While those changes can certainly mean something, they're only scratching the surface. The real transformation happens much deeper than appearance. As a female psychologist, I often describe this process as strategic vulnerability. When a woman begins seeing you as her long-term partner rather than simply someone she's dating, she slowly stops presenting the carefully edited version of herself. The polished image fades away. Instead, she starts allowing you into the ordinary, imperfect, and emotionally complicated parts of her world. She may tell you about professional failures that still haunt her. She may finally open up about painful family conflicts she's hidden for years. She might cry in front of you without apologizing. She may admit fears, insecurities, and disappointments that almost nobody else knows exist. To someone who doesn't understand psychology, this might look like emotional instability. But in reality, it's often one of the strongest expressions of trust a woman can offer. She's not becoming careless. She's becoming emotionally safe. Without even realizing it consciously, her mind has started identifying you as the person she can return to when life becomes overwhelming. You've become her emotional shelter, her safe place. And every time she shows you another imperfect piece of herself, she's quietly asking one question. If you see all of me, will you still choose me? That's the hidden purpose behind strategic vulnerability. She's testing the strength of emotional security, not through games, but through authenticity. However, there's another side to this behavior that many men completely overlook. While she becomes increasingly open, relaxed, and emotionally transparent with you, she often becomes noticeably more reserved around other men. This shift is subtle, but incredibly meaningful. The attention she once casually accepted from others no longer feels valuable to her. The emotional energy she used to distribute more freely begins narrowing toward one person. She naturally creates stronger emotional boundaries, not because someone forced her to, but because her priorities have quietly changed. Her focus isn't on attracting new attention anymore. It's on protecting the connection she's already chosen. And that's a behavioral shift most people never notice. But once you understand it, you'll never look at deep love the same way again. What experts often describe as attentional filtering, sometimes called selective blindness, is one of the most overlooked signs of genuine emotional commitment. As a female psychologist, I've seen this pattern appear again and again in deeply bonded relationships. When a woman reaches a certain level of emotional attachment, something subtle begins happening inside her mind. Her attention naturally shifts away from potential alternatives. It's not a conscious decision she makes every morning. Instead, her brain starts treating other romantic possibilities as irrelevant background noise. Think back to the beginning of your relationship. She may have casually mentioned a guy from work who was flirting with her, talked about an ex who unexpectedly reached out, or laughed about someone who tried to get her attention. Those conversations felt normal because at that stage, her brain was still processing the world as full of possibilities. But once her love becomes deeply rooted, something changes. Those stories gradually disappear. She doesn't mention the stranger who complimented her while she was out shopping. She doesn't tell you about the random message sitting in her social media inbox. She doesn't even think to bring up the man who attempted to start a conversation while she was waiting for coffee. Many men immediately assume she's hiding something. Ironically, the opposite is often true. She's not keeping secrets because she's being dishonest. She simply stopped assigning emotional importance to those interactions. To her, they're no more meaningful than someone commenting on the weather. Her mind has already settled on what truly matters. As a female psychologist, I often explain it this way. When someone feels emotionally secure, the brain becomes incredibly efficient. It stops wasting attention on options that no longer serve a purpose. It's almost like an internal search engine. Once it has found the answer it trusts, it stops displaying endless alternatives. That's exactly what happens here. She doesn't behave as though you're the only man in the world because someone demanded that she should. She behaves that way because emotionally, you've become the center of where her attention naturally wants to stay. Her biology is no longer searching, it's investing. Unfortunately, many men completely misread this shift. When she stops mentioning other men altogether, they become suspicious. Why doesn't she ever tell me when someone flirts with her anymore? Is she hiding things? But very often, that silence is one of the strongest expressions of commitment she can give. She's already shown you her insecurities. She's trusted you with her weakest moments. And at the same time, she's quietly stopped giving emotional space to anyone else. You haven't simply become her favorite option. In her mind, the list of options has quietly disappeared. 2. The unseen advocate. The second sign is fascinating because you may never actually witness it yourself. In fact, most of the time it happens when you're nowhere nearby. I call this becoming the unseen advocate. When a woman truly falls in love, she doesn't just care about you as an individual. She begins protecting your reputation as though it were part of her own identity. Think about the different groups in her life: her closest friends, her coworkers, her siblings, her parents. Eventually, someone will question you. Maybe they'll criticize your ambitions. Maybe they'll assume your intentions aren't genuine. Maybe they'll bring up a mistake you made or express doubts about your future. A woman who only likes you may avoid the conversation. Sometimes she'll even agree with the criticism simply to avoid conflict or fit in with everyone else. But a woman who has developed deep emotional attachment usually reacts very differently. She defends you, sometimes with an intensity that surprises everyone around her. As a female psychologist, this reflects something called protective partnership. At this stage, your identity has become psychologically connected to hers. So when someone attacks your character, part of her experiences that criticism as if it were directed at herself. That's why her response often feels so personal. Here's what many people find surprising. She may defend you publicly, even when she privately knows you made a mistake. That doesn't mean she believes you're perfect. It means she separates accountability from loyalty. If you've handled something poorly, she'll probably tell you, but she'll do it when you're alone. She refuses to let outsiders define your relationship. To everyone else, the two of you remain a team. She understands something many couples never learn. The moment she allows other people to openly disrespect you without speaking up, she unintentionally communicates that your relationship is open for public judgment. She has no interest in giving anyone that authority. Want to know whether this is happening? Pay attention whenever you're around the people closest to her. Notice how they interact with you. If they seem respectful in a very intentional way, if they're careful about crossing certain boundaries, if there's an unspoken understanding that you're someone who deserves respect. That atmosphere usually didn't appear by accident. More often than not, she helped create it. Through dozens of private conversations you were never part of, she established one clear expectation: your name deserves respect. Without asking you, she quietly built a protective wall around your reputation. And that's one of the strongest forms of loyalty a partner can demonstrate. Unfortunately, the reverse is also true. When she begins regularly complaining about your flaws to her friends, when she allows family members to constantly criticize you without defending you, when she starts inviting outsiders into problems that should stay between the two of you, those are often early signs that emotional commitment has started weakening. But as long as she remains your unseen advocate, you have someone who's willing to protect your dignity, even when you never know the battle took place. 3. The mental map. Have you ever been caught completely off guard because a woman remembered something you barely remembered saying yourself? Maybe months ago, during a random conversation, you mentioned your favorite childhood candy. Perhaps you casually complained about a difficult coworker and forgot about it the next day. Then, weeks or even months later, she surprises you with that exact candy. Or she suddenly asks, "Whatever happened with that coworker you were telling me about?" And you're left wondering, how does she even remember that? Most men simply smile and assume she's blessed with an incredible memory. But as a female psychologist, I can tell you there's something much deeper happening beneath the surface. When a woman becomes deeply emotionally attached, her brain starts changing what it considers important. The areas responsible for learning, memory, and emotional significance begin giving special priority to information connected to you. She's not intentionally trying to memorize every detail. Her mind naturally starts treating those details as valuable. That's why she remembers things you forgot saying minutes after you said them. To her, those small pieces of information aren't random facts. They're clues. Every conversation becomes another piece of a much larger picture she's quietly building. Without realizing it, she's creating a detailed emotional blueprint of who you are. While you're simply living your everyday life, she's slowly connecting patterns. She remembers the story about your childhood because it explains why certain situations still affect you today. She notices the tiny change in your facial expression before you even admit you're stressed. She knows exactly how you like your coffee, but she also knows the difference between your tired smile, your fake smile, and the smile that's completely genuine. She begins recognizing your emotional rhythms, the moments when you withdraw, the situations that make you confident, the experiences that trigger old insecurities, even the subjects you avoid discussing. To some men, this level of observation can feel almost overwhelming. Sometimes it even becomes uncomfortable, especially during disagreements. She might calmly point out a pattern you've never noticed in yourself. She may connect today's frustration with something you shared months ago. Suddenly, you're wondering, how did she put all of that together? It's easy to assume she's trying to win the argument, or that she's manipulating the conversation. But look deeper. As a female psychologist, I found that in healthy relationships, this behavior usually comes from curiosity, not control. She's not collecting information to trap you. She's collecting information to understand you. For many women, understanding the person they love becomes one of the purest expressions of emotional intimacy. The better she understands your inner world, the safer she feels building a future with you. That's why she remembers the details. Not because she has to, because emotionally, you've become one of the most important subjects her mind has chosen to study. Eventually, she reaches a point where she can often recognize your needs before you've even spoken them out loud. And that's when emotional connection moves beyond words. 4. The power of silence, the biggest game changer. Now we've reached the sign that causes more unnecessary panic than almost anything else. Ironically, it's also one of the strongest indicators of deep love. I'm talking about peaceful silence. Picture the scene. The two of you are sitting together on the couch. An hour passes. Neither of you says much. She's reading a novel. Maybe she's casually scrolling through her phone. You're focused on your own thoughts or watching something quietly. Nothing dramatic is happening. For many men, this moment feels terrifying. Their mind immediately starts creating stories. The chemistry is fading. She's bored. Something must be wrong. That anxiety pushes them into action. They start forcing conversations, making unnecessary jokes, asking, "Are you okay?" or suddenly suggesting elaborate plans simply because the quiet feels uncomfortable. But if you react that way, you may completely misunderstand one of the deepest forms of emotional security. As a female psychologist, I often tell people this: comfortable silence isn't the absence of connection. It's evidence that connection has matured. When a woman truly loves you, she no longer feels responsible for constantly entertaining you. She doesn't feel pressured to perform. She doesn't believe every second needs to be filled with conversation just to keep your attention. Instead, something beautiful happens. Your presence alone becomes emotionally regulating. Being beside you calms her nervous system. She doesn't need endless excitement. She doesn't need constant stimulation. She doesn't need every moment to feel like a movie scene. Because when love becomes secure, simply being near you feels enough. In her emotional world, being with you is no longer the activity. It's the destination. That's why these quiet moments matter so much. Instead of focusing on the silence itself, pay attention to everything happening around it. Notice her posture. Is she sitting comfortably? Does she naturally lean toward you? Does the room feel relaxed instead of tense? Is there a quiet sense of peace between you? Those signals tell a much more accurate story than words ever could. If she's physically close, emotionally relaxed, and completely comfortable sharing silence with you, she's not drifting away. She's showing you something incredibly rare. She's showing you that she finally feels safe enough to simply exist beside you without pretending to be anyone else. Very few relationships ever reach that level. And the couples who understand it rarely mistake silence for distance. If you learn to appreciate those peaceful moments instead of fearing them, you'll experience a depth of trust that many people spend their entire lives searching for. 5. Natural integration and mature conflict. The final signs of transformational love aren't found in grand romantic gestures. They're revealed in everyday decisions and in the way she handles conflict. This is where relationships quietly transition from dating to building a shared future. As a female psychologist, I call this stage natural integration. At this point, she doesn't consciously remind herself to think about you. She simply does. You've become part of the way she naturally plans her life. Imagine she's considering a new job opportunity. Without even noticing, she's already thinking about how the change might affect both of your routines. Maybe she's planning a vacation with her friends. Before confirming anything, she automatically checks whether it overlaps with your schedule. She's organizing holidays, making financial decisions, thinking about future goals, and somewhere inside every calculation, you're already included. Not because she's dependent on you, not because she's seeking permission, and certainly not because she's losing her independence. She's simply reached the point where imagining the future without considering you no longer feels natural. She isn't consciously trying to include you in every decision. It simply happens. As a female psychologist, I often tell people that this is one of the clearest signs that love has shifted from excitement into commitment. Without even realizing it, she's begun treating you as a permanent part of her future. Not a possibility, not an option, a constant. In her mind, imagining tomorrow without considering you starts feeling incomplete. You're no longer someone she fits into her plans. You're part of the structure those plans are built upon. That's a powerful psychological shift. But there's an even stronger test of deep love: conflict. Because arguments reveal what emotions often hide. In relationships that lack emotional maturity, conflict becomes a competition. Each person focuses on proving they're right. Winning becomes more important than understanding. Pride takes over. But when a woman is deeply committed, the purpose of conflict begins to change. She no longer fights to defeat you. She fights to repair the relationship. As a female psychologist, this is one of the healthiest transformations I see in long-term couples. Instead of asking, "How do I win this argument?" her mind starts asking, "How do we solve this without damaging what we've built?" That difference changes everything. You'll notice she becomes more willing to lower her emotional defenses. Sometimes she'll be the first to apologize, even when only a small part of the misunderstanding was her responsibility. Not because she's weak, not because she enjoys admitting fault, but because protecting the relationship matters more than protecting her ego. If emotions become overwhelming, she may suggest taking a short break before continuing the conversation. Not to avoid the problem, but to prevent saying something that could leave lasting scars. Her goal isn't silence. Her goal is healing. She understands that temporary frustration should never become permanent damage. That's emotional maturity. And that's exactly what lasting love looks like. When someone consistently chooses the health of the relationship over the satisfaction of winning an argument, they're investing in something much bigger than the moment itself. They're investing in the future. If she's willing to set aside pride in order to protect the connection the two of you share, you're not simply with someone who enjoys your company. You're with someone who's actively building a life beside you. The final truth. If you've been listening to these 7 behaviors and found yourself quietly thinking, "This describes the woman in my life almost perfectly," then pause for a moment. Really let that thought sink in. Because what you have may be far rarer than you realize. You're not just experiencing another relationship. You're not simply enjoying the excitement of the honeymoon phase. You've crossed into something much deeper. As a female psychologist, I describe this stage as emotional fusion. This is the point where two lives become emotionally interconnected, not through dependence, but through profound attachment. Her emotional well-being becomes closely tied to yours. You stop feeling like two completely separate people walking side by side. Instead, you begin functioning as a genuine team. Her nervous system gradually starts responding to your emotional reality, almost as if it were her own. That means your victories don't belong only to you anymore. Imagine walking through the front door and sharing exciting news. Maybe you earned the promotion you've been chasing. Maybe you finally achieved a goal you've worked toward for years. A woman who's deeply in love won't simply smile politely and say, "Congratulations." She'll celebrate with genuine excitement. You'll see it in her face. Her energy changes. Her eyes brighten. She feels authentic pride because your success has become emotionally meaningful to her own life. Watching you succeed genuinely makes her happy. Sometimes, she'll even celebrate more enthusiastically than you do. But there's another side to this emotional connection that's even more revealing. Life isn't always filled with victories. There will be setbacks, failures, losses, moments when you feel discouraged. During those seasons, she doesn't stand at a comfortable emotional distance offering empty sympathy. She feels your struggle. She notices your stress before you mention it. She worries when you carry heavy burdens. She may lose sleep because she knows you're overwhelmed. Your pain isn't something happening to someone else. Emotionally, part of it becomes hers. As a female psychologist, this doesn't mean healthy couples lose their individual identities. Rather, it reflects deep emotional empathy. Your lives have become connected enough that each person's emotional state naturally influences the other. That level of investment cannot be faked. It's built slowly, through trust, consistency, safety, and genuine love. So here's the advice I want to leave you with. If the woman in your life demonstrates these 7 behaviors, if she quietly protects your reputation when you're not around, if she remembers the smallest details that make you who you are, if she's perfectly comfortable sharing peaceful silence with you, if she naturally includes you in her future, if she chooses healing instead of winning during conflict, and if she celebrates your victories while carrying your struggles alongside you. Stop questioning what you already have. Stop searching for imaginary alternatives. Stop analyzing every mood as though it's evident something is wrong. And most importantly, stop fearing commitment simply because it feels vulnerable. Real emotional loyalty is becoming increasingly rare. When you find someone who willingly builds her future with yours, you've discovered something many people spend their entire lives hoping to experience. Never take that for granted. Appreciate her. Respect the effort she quietly invests in your relationship. Match the emotional depth she's offering. Because extraordinary relationships don't survive through luck. They survive because 2 people continue choosing each other again and again, even after the excitement fades. If this perspective helped you understand relationships in a completely new way, I'd love to have you join me for more conversations like this. I'm Sarah, and on this channel, we explore the psychology behind attraction, emotional connection, and lasting relationships from a female psychologist's perspective. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. And before you leave, let me know in the comments by writing "Got it." I'd love to know this message resonated with you. Thank you for spending your time with me. I'll see you in the next one.